Greetings. It's been a while since I've put out basically what's going to be a long video. The last one I did was back in early September when I was talking about the new Logitech mouse that I bought. But I haven't really talked anything about me since August. And the reason I hadn't done that is because I turned 65 and a lot has been going on. And before that happened, it really started back in June. And I'm going to talk about 5 specific things that have happened or that I've had to deal with. And the last one, to me, is probably the most important, and I have no real idea what I'm going to do about it. So let's start with the first thing. One of those things I've always wanted to make sure I monitored is how many people actually had my phone number. Now, at a certain point, I basically had 2 home phone numbers. Actually, one was a home number, the other was my business number. So I only gave out the business number to people who are related to business. If I was advertising for those people or if I was consulting with those people, that's what that number was for. The personal line, I basically had it because I was married at the time when I got it back in 2000. And then when she left, Mom was here, so I had to still have that main line, which I would give numbers out if it was going to be about her. Some of my friends had that number, but the few that I talk to more often than not, I text using the smartphone. So I didn't have a lot of that kind of thing going on. Well, if you're getting close to Medicare age, all of a sudden, all bets are off. First thing is that you get something from Medicare and you're thinking, well, okay, I'm within that time period where, I'm going to turn 65 in America. When you turn 65, you're pretty much already eligible for Medicare unless you're still working at that time. And I wasn't actually working before then. I got a part-time job in May, but they don't count that. So anyway, I have all that. Medicare sends me something. Actually, the Social Security Department sends me something. So I keep saying Medicare. I mean Social Security. They send me something saying, yep, you're going to turn 65 and on that date or the beginning of that month, you're going to be on Medicare and whatever your secondary insurance is. And you're like, well, okay. And I never really thought about it because I filled out some information with New York State. It's wonderful living in New York State if you know what you're doing. So basically, I have insurance coverage through New York State through the end of this year. And I spoke with someone probably in the middle of August. And she did this questionnaire and it was like, 25 minutes on the phone. And she said, yep, you're covered for the rest of this year. And if all the information you gave me sticks into the next year, then you'll have that coverage, which basically means I don't have to pay for Medicare Part B. I'm covered under New York State. Now, things could always change. It doesn't really take a whole lot more money for me to be earning through my part-time job where it might move me into the other direction. And as a matter of fact, Medicare had started taking out money for Part B. And then New York State basically said, nah, they can't do that. So we're going to cover all of that, and you're going to get that money back that you paid. I ain't mad at that. I haven't seen it, but there we go. I'm lucky that I have a job where I can do something. But you get inundated by all this mail and an email. Companies that I've never heard of, and I'm in healthcare. At least I was in healthcare for 40 years, so I knew a lot of insurance companies. I got tons of stuff from a bunch of companies because the Social Security Administration people send that out to every insurance company to give you an opportunity to look to see what they have. And you want to know what it's like? Medicare and You 2024. I got this one back in June. Medicare and You 2025. I got this one in August, just after I had the conversation with this lady. Now, these you don't really know, but in New York State, Excellus is the biggest carrier. They're part of Blue Cross. And I mean, this book is 130 pages. No one's going to read 130 pages. I did skim through it, looking for the stuff that I thought might involve me. And then when I talked to this lady on the phone, I didn't need that anymore. But then you get this one here. As you can see, it says Medicare Blue Dual. This is about extras, drugs, pharmaceuticals that you may need and you may need coverage for. And so I got this, but they're covering it all for me. So I've got no gripes whatsoever. However, if they don't know about you and you don't get anything, and I wrote an article for my accountant basically saying, hey, you know what? You might not have any coverage or whatever, but throughout the country, there's some kind of coverage that is put through by the Affordable Care Act. And if you haven't gone to your local or state, I'll say Medicaid program, assistance program, to find out, you might be able to get coverage from your state. I'm going to tell you, if you're in a MAGA state, you might have some difficulties because they don't want you to have anything. But I love living in New York. Anyway, I got these 4, and these are the 4 that I kept because I have gotten probably 20 or 25 of those. And I've gotten tons of letters. And I started getting phone calls. I don't answer the phone. If I don't know who it is, I don't answer the phone. But I got tons of calls from insurance companies wanting me to call them. I'm ignoring them because I've got coverage. But what happens? All of a sudden, you have no real privacy anymore. You might have privacy from the people down the street, but you don't have privacy anywhere else. They all know my phone number. I guess that's just part of the thing. You get to a certain age, and maybe it's a good thing. I'm not necessarily sure. I'll come back to that when I do my 5th point, because like I said, I'm talking about 5 specific things. The next thing, talking about insurance and well-being. So I told you about the insurance. So I have Medicare Part A, which everybody gets at age 65. I have Part B Medicare, but I don't have Part B Medicare. In essence, Part B Medicare means that they're going to take a certain amount out of your Social Security check, which is going to pay for, well, whatever insurance that you get. And you're not going to get all of the same coverage that you would get if you were still employed. You're going to get partial stuff here and there. You're going to get some things that are kind of a nice boost, but then you're going to have certain things where you're going to end up having to either pay more money, or you're going to have to decide, God, do I have enough money to be able to pay for that medication and, still buy food and other stuff? I'm covered on that front, but it's still something that you have to deal with. The well-being thing, for instance, that was interesting. I told you about the lady who I spoke to for 20 or 25 minutes, and I answered a bunch of questions. And it's one of those kind of things where, I'll tell you the truth, there were some of those questions I didn't want to answer because I'm sitting there thinking, that's private. I don't want to tell that. But it's like, well, if you don't be forthcoming and you don't tell the truth and you don't work with these folks who are really trying to help you, then you get what you get. And if you don't get what you should get as far as protection or food or medications or anything else, then that's on you. So I'm glad that they called. Some questions I'd never thought about. Like, oh, really? I'd never thought about that question, and it's for my well-being. And truthfully, a lot of us don't sit around thinking about our well-being in a lot of these respects. For instance, the thing came up asking about, my eyesight. How's my eyesight? And I mentioned, well, I had cataract surgery in November for one eye, December for the other eye. And she said, wow, that's great. So you don't need anything? Do you have glasses, prescription for, reading close things? I said, nah, I go to Dollar Tree. I buy them for $1.75. And I'm good. But it was nice that someone asked that question. They already knew about the diabetes because of the, coverage that I have through Excellus, Blue Cross Blue Shield, through the Affordable Care Act. Yeah, I'm mentioning that again. Y'all need to check that out. But still, that was kind of nice. I didn't see that coming. I make an assumption that it happens in a lot of states. I know it doesn't happen in every state because, sometimes your politicians don't care about you. I'm going to say that a few more times probably also. So it's nice that someone asked me questions that my primary care physician didn't ask. I get asked questions by the endocrinologist's office talking about diabetes and whatever, and obviously I get, questions from the eye surgeon, the guy who did that, who's also my ophthalmologist. But, there you go. And by the way, I also have a sleep doctor, and it's hard to pronounce, somnambulist or whatever, something like that. And I have a podiatrist. So at least I have certain people who are, asking me questions and taking care of me as much as they're allowed to. It never hurts to have some of that. I don't have a dentist. That one I'm having trouble with, but we'll see how that goes as time moves forward. Now, the next thing is financial situations. That's an interesting one because before I had the part-time job, I was basically living off of my Social Security. And the Social Security was enough to basically pay bills, but it wasn't really enough to buy healthy foods. So I was basically buying what I could afford that would stretch out a long time. And, that's what you do. There's some bills that I was able to cut out, because I wasn't really using that stuff anymore. And there's one I'm trying to get rid of, which is Brinks. And I don't trust Brinks. And I've paid enough money where I should not be getting another bill, but then I got something saying that I had a credit balance of $33, and I'm trying to figure out how that's going to work because I have a feeling they're going to send me one more bill and I'm going to supposedly owe them something. And then that's a phone call I need to make because I'm cutting that. So that's at least another $60. But like I said, now I have this part-time job. It brings me enough money so that I can buy food. I can buy certain other things. But of course, other things also start happening. For instance, I ended up with a flat tire. I do a driving thing. I drive around and deliver pharmaceuticals to patients. So I ended up having to replace a tire. Then I had to replace a water heater. That was $2,000. I didn't see that coming. There's some other things I need to take care of. In the house, a couple of things on the car. So I have to kind of budget my money. It's a good thing I'm good at that. And there's times when I look at how much I have and I say, well, you know what? I can go ahead and pay for this, but I'm going to wait till the next check just in case some kind of emergency comes up because then I'll have more money in my checking account that I can use it on some of these other things. That's something you have to start thinking about. How to budget your money so you don't run out of money and you have something that's it's just an emergency. I ran into that the first month after I was making money and I said, okay, now we got to start being better. Without that, I wouldn't have been able to pay for the water heater or the tire. So there it is. And I need another tire. Ain't my fault. That's all I'm saying. Then we're talking about health and nutrition. So I talked about, the health, talking to this lady on the phone. And then I start getting all these manuals from them talking about different ways. Well, I also ended up having a meeting with the people at the Jocelyn Center. Those are the people I go to see for my diabetes information. And I spoke to both an educational person and a nutritionist. And that turned out to be interesting because it turns out that I never knew much about, protein. Never occurred to me. And there's a friend of mine who had mentioned something about protein saying, well, you need to make sure you eat enough protein. But I didn't know where she got her number from. So I'm talking to the nutritionist and she looked this up and she says, yeah, you need at least 80 grams of protein every day based on your height and your weight and your age, whatever, like 80 grams of protein. I wasn't anywhere close to that. Now I'm getting close to it. I had to get used to it because it turns out that 8 ounces of chicken is a lot. That's a lot of food. I never thought it was that much food until you start measuring it. Yeah, that. But there's a lot of other things that have nutrition in it. Cashews have a lot of nutrition in it. Cashews are expensive. So you need to make sure you're spending money properly. But that's turned out to be a big thing. I've always been tracking my calories because, being diabetic and I have the Fitbit. So I've always been able to have pretty good, I've always been real good with that, monitoring that. I've had a couple of days here and there because we all do, where it's just like, nah, I'm sorry, I'm at a restaurant. They've got this kind of fancy dessert that I really want to eat. I'm taking that chance. I do. And now I take my medication. And, one of the weird things about medication is that I just discovered a couple of weeks ago that this medication I've been taking to take a shot, and I may link to, a video on my other channel that I did talking about this thing. However, I've been taking Novolin for about 10 years. And then all of a sudden I started getting all these letters saying, okay, we're not covering that anymore. And I'm like, what the devil? What's going on with that? Then I get a call from Joslin Center, and then I get a call from this other company I never heard of, but they're based in Florida and they work with the Joslin Center, saying, well, we're going to be getting rid of that. So I'm going to be taking a new type of insulin. And I wondered why. So I went to look it up, and it turns out that basically no company is going to be making Novolin by the end of the year. Well, that would have been nicer to know early on, because I've been turning down certain types of medications, not only the stuff that I knew I didn't want to take, but other things because I didn't know what it was. So I'll be on something else. But those kind of things happen all the time, and people don't always tell us these things. So we have that issue. Also, I now have a new CPAP machine. So I had what was called the Mesred S7. I'd had that for 12 years. Yes, I'd had it for 12 years. A lot of people don't last that long, but I've known some who've lasted 20. But I'd been turning down getting a new machine because I thought they were going to give me a Philips machine, which has been under a lot of controversy under the last, after the last 4 or 5 years, because, well, they were sneaky, they violated a bunch of rules, and now they're paying for it. So I'm sitting there thinking, I don't want that. Goodness. Then I had a thought one night before I went to bed saying, if this thing actually breaks on me, I'm going to have days, possibly weeks, when I'm not going to be able to sleep because I need that thing helping me to breathe during the night. So I went ahead and got a new machine, totally covered by insurance because of everything I've gone through, over this past few years and whatever. And it turns out that it's from Mesred. So I don't have to deal with Philips. I don't have to deal with any other thing. And it's quieter. It's slightly smaller than my other machine. I'm glad. So that was a major step forward. So, but it's now the next thing that you have to think about. Here's number 5, and this is the big one for me. And it probably needs to be a big one for everyone else, unless you, live with someone else. Maybe you're married and you have a spouse. Maybe you have kids who live there. Maybe you have kids who live close. Maybe you have a bunch of close friends who might know certain things. I don't have any of that. I have one relative in the entire state, and she lives down in the Bronx. So that would be a 5-hour, well, if she's lucky, a 5-hour drive to get here. That's not going to happen. But she's not going to get here because who's going to tell her? None of my friends know who she is. So that's not going to happen. That's one of those big things that I've been thinking about. If something happens to me, say I start feeling a chest pain. Well, if I start feeling a chest pain, there's no one to call. If I fall down in one of the big rooms and I, break my leg or something really hurts, I'm going to have to find a way to drag myself to a phone to call somebody because I don't have a medical alert. I don't have that because who am I going to give it to? So that's not going to happen. If something happens during the night and I can get on the phone and call 911, that's not going to work because all my doors are triple locked. You've got all kind of bolt doors and stuff like that. Maybe they can try breaking through the window in the living room. I'm not necessarily good with that, but none of my doors, no one has a way to get through any of those numbers except for a couple of friends who have the backup keys. One of those friends is actually moving to Florida next summer, so he's going to be out of the picture, and that basically leaves one person who has keys to the house. And if it happens at night, he's not going to answer that. So that is somewhat frightening. But it's the kind of thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I've been thinking about, what happens if I have that problem. And it's something where if I could get a medical professional to the house quick enough and get me somewhere, I could still live, But if they can't get in the house, what do you do? That one's a tough one to think about. I don't want to be a burden on anybody. Like I said, I don't have any, real relatives. I have the one relative in the entire state. I've got, a couple of close friends who I can talk to all the time, but one is leaving the state and the other one is 6 years older than me. And he's had some issues with his health. I don't know. That one's a tough one. I'm not really sure what to do. So I think about it. And it's one of those kind of things where I'm still trying to do other stuff. I'm still trying to write on my blogs. I'm still trying to do YouTube videos here and there. But I think about this other thing all the time. I've gotten into a weird habit, and this is weird for me. It may not be weird for everybody, where I'm actually cleaning up rooms. And I don't mean, getting a vacuum cleaner and, cleaning it up and wiping stuff down. I mean cleaning out. I've got tons of stuff. I had a lot more stuff in my office right now. I mean, you don't really see a bunch of stuff here, but I've got a bunch over there, a bunch over there, but I've been whittling it down. The same thing with my master bedroom. Tons of stuff that was in there, stuff that was there when my ex lived here, stuff after she left. And it's like, wow, okay, it's time to decide to pare this down. I had tons of stuff in the kitchen. I still have tons of stuff in the kitchen, but not anything that I can't use. So I've done that. The living room was already taken care of. The dining room was already taken care of. But I got 3 other bedrooms. And 2 of those bedrooms still have a bunch of stuff in it. One of them doesn't have a bunch of stuff, but it has some clutter stuff. And I don't know what to do with it. One of these years I might have to, pay for one of those big dumpster things and have that come over. And then, hopefully I can find 1 or 2 other people, I don't know, just to put some stuff in that and let them take it to the dump and clear that out. Yes, it's a 5-bedroom house. And I'm going to keep it as long as I can because Micron's supposed to be coming into the area. The price of houses has gone way up. The amount that my house is now worth has almost doubled in the last 2.5 years. So if I can last at least another 4 or 5 years in this house, I think in one of the Guardian of the Galaxy movies, he sat there saying, we could get a lot of cheddar. But, because I've had some people say, well, why don't you just sell the house and move into an apartment complex? Think about it this way. If I was still paying $450 a month in an apartment complex, that would be a good deal. But now, in this area, we live in a good apartment complex is $1,200 to $1,300 a month at a minimum. So that basically says that you're going to be paying something like $12,000, $13,000 a year at a minimum for that. Which also then says that if I sold this house for around $300,000, which sounds like a bunch of money, it ain't that much money. That will be gone in 10 years or less. Because, you're paying, like I said, $12,000 or $13,000 a year. So that's $130,000. But you still have to pay bills and you still need other stuff. You might need another car, whatever. It's just not enough. No matter how you budget it, unless you're, ready to get yourself back into another financial position. It's the kind of things like that that you really need to start thinking about a lot earlier than 65, but almost nobody does. And I had been putting away a lot of money, and then when Mom passed away, and it took a while for me to try to get my mindset back, and then it took a while sending out all these resumes and contacting whatever, that I finally got a part-time job. And it's in my field, but it's not in my field of expertise. But I'm glad I got it. And I like the people I work with. So I got lucky there also. They're all a lot younger than me. So that's something to get used to. But, it's not bad. I only see them maybe 15 minutes a day. And then I'm in the car all day long. I mean, who can argue with anything like that? So anyhow, those are my thoughts on things that all of us who get to 65, or maybe are just getting close to 65, or you're older than that, but there's stuff you hadn't thought about before, there it is. Like I said, this is all America. I have no idea how things actually work in other countries, but I do know some people who live in Australia who don't have to worry about almost any of this. That's not a bad deal. But then they got those wild kangaroos and stuff. I ain't going there. So anyhow, that's what I have. Let me know your thoughts. Y'all have a wonderful day.